Topic 4.4 Maritime Empires Established. Imagine setting sail on a wooden ship with the vast expanse of the unknown sea ahead. The year is 1500, and the waves you ride carry not just you, but the ambitions, dreams, and rivalries of empires that hope to dominate this new world. This is the era of the maritime empires, and it's crucial to the tapestry of world history. Many of you are likely familiar with names like Columbus, Magellan, and Vasco da Gama. However, the breadth of the maritime empires stretches far beyond these famous explorers. Many students grapple with understanding the intricate webs of trade, the motivations behind empire expansion, and the profound consequences of these interactions on global societies. Knowing the establishment and influence of maritime empires is paramount for the AP World History test. Not only are they pivotal points in our global timeline, but they also serve as foundational knowledge that interlinks with other historical events and concepts. We'll start by exploring the process of state building and expansion. Next, we'll dissect economic and labor systems, focusing on their evolution over these 3 centuries. And lastly, we'll delve into the intricate world of slavery systems. Hold on to your hats and let's dive in. Explain the process of state building and expansion among various empires and states in the period from 1450 to 1750. So, driven by political, religious, and economic rivalries, the European powers, notably the Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, French, and British, embarked on ambitious voyages. And these led to the establishment of new maritime empires in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. The Portuguese had Brazil. The Portuguese also had a dots of trading posts all along Africa, areas like Malacca in Asia. The Spanish had in Asia, they had the Philippines, but they also had much of their colonies in the Americas. The Dutch had New Amsterdam in the Americas, but also swinging around, had Indonesian influence that was massive in Asia and began to work against the Portuguese in Africa. The French had Haiti, of course, but they also had influence in Asia and moved around and had influence in Africa as well, and the British Empire was just everywhere. So, beyond Europe, the Ashanti and the Kingdom of Congo expanded and flourished because, ironically, of these trade networks. Meanwhile, even though there was this intrusive arrival of Portuguese, Spanish, and Dutch, we had established trade networks in the Indian Ocean and Swahili coast, like those that involved the Swahili Arabs, the people from the Sultanate of Oman, the Indians, the very commercially focused Indians who are the Gujaratis, and the Javanese from Indonesia thrived. Therefore, while Europe aggressively expanded, other states either embraced the opportunity or were forced to adopt defensive measures, like the Kingdom of Congo, who actually managed to mostly beat the Portuguese. Now, what were the continuities and changes in these economic and labor systems from 1450 to 1750? So these powers established trading posts in Africa and Asia. They turned massive profits for rulers and merchants, and they engaged in some of these new global trade networks. But some Asian states, like Ming China and Tokugawa Japan, feared the unsettling economic and cultural impacts of the European trade, and they chose restrictive or isolationist trade policies. However, in the Americas, the story was different. New colonial economics leaned heavily on agriculture. They employed age-old labor systems, such as the Incan mita, to encourage Incans to mine gold. But while the Incan system had originally done things like build houses for new couples, the Spanish just collected the money. Chattel slavery was a big difference because people were agriculturally worked to death, and that tends to be more harsh than simply servant slavery or courtesan slavery, as unpleasant as it was. And indentured servitude did exist as well, where people would agree to work for a period of time in order to get a ticket to another life. Encomienda was attempting to set up the Spanish feudally to quote unquote protect Indians, but the Indians unfortunately caught massive amounts of diseases or just ran away into the natural environment. So the hacienda system was adapted where a bunch of encomenderos would band together, but that didn't really work much more effectively either. So, what were the changes and continuities in this system of slavery in the period from 1450 to 1750? So, the practice of enslavement in Africa largely had its traditional forms. Like enslaved people would be the part of households, they'd be servants or they'd be partners, but if an enslaved courtesan had a child, that child would often become part of the ruling elite. There was a continuation of the export of enslaved individuals to the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. We have to acknowledge that. But with the rise of the plantation economy in the Americas, the demand for enslaved labor surged, and it brought demographic, social, and cultural changes, and tended to be some pretty significant impacts to countries. Now, while the maritime empires left an indelible mark on global history, their dominance wouldn't last forever. The winds of change, as they always do, began to blow, paving the way for the revolutions and the nationalist movements of the 18th and 19th centuries. As we pivot towards those transformative events, always remember no empire, no matter how vast, is immune to the tides of time.